All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into Chapter 12,
Okay.
Roommates,
Oh, cool.
from the book A Practical EmPath, Rewire Your Mind by Scott Howard Swain.
Awesome.
And, it's funny how we often think of roommates just in that classic college scenario,
Yeah.
but Swain actually pulls from a whole range of living experiences,
Oh, interesting.
like from Airbnbs to couch surfing.
Wow.
And it just makes you realize that, this advice really does apply way beyond
Yeah.
dorm life.
Definitely. I think so many people can relate to that. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone's had some kind of roommate experience, whether it's family or friends
Right.
or
Exactly.
significant others. So,
Exactly.
yeah. And a universal topic.
Yeah, for sure. And what's so fascinating is how Swain uses this framework called P.E.P, Practical Empathy Practice.
Yes.
So, it's not about suddenly becoming like
Right.
the world's most feeling person.
Exactly.
It's more about observation, understanding feelings,
Yeah.
and then getting to the root of those feelings, which is someone's values and needs.
I love that about his approach. It's not about forcing yourself to feel a certain way. It's about understanding
Right.
where those feelings are coming from and how they connect to what people value.
Yeah. And so how does Swain actually connect this to, like, the roommate situation?
Well, right off the bat, he talks about this idea of, defining boundaries,
Okay.
specifically like shared versus personal spaces.
Okay.
He gives this really simple example of like leaving socks around, like
Yeah.
no big deal if it's in your own bedroom, but in a shared living space,
Yeah.
it can be a source of fiction.
Yeah.
And that's where observation comes in, noticing those little things that might bug your roommate, even if they seem insignificant to you.
Yeah, that's so true. And, it's funny because Swain's point about respecting boundaries isn't just about the dishes in the sink or whatever.
Right.
It's about understanding that everyone comes to a living situation with these different backgrounds and expectations,
Absolutely.
whether they've been backpacking across Europe or,
Yeah.
living with their family their whole life.
Totally different perspectives and experiences,
Right.
how they approach shared living.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that ties directly to the feeling aspect of PE.
Exactly.
Like, think about how frustrating it can be to constantly be tripping over someone's shoes in the hallway.
Oh, yeah.
Or dealing with a messy kitchen.
Totally.
Like, those little annoyances can actually trigger a lot of negative emotion.
Oh, absolutely. And I think Swain really wants us to acknowledge those feelings, instead of just brushing them under the rug,
Yeah.
because they're valid,
Yeah.
even if they seem small.
For sure. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Swain talks about this concept, your stuff owns you.
Oh.
Now, I'm a bit of a minimalist myself, so this immediately resonated with me. But, like, how does he connect this to the roommate dynamic?
I think it's brilliant. He's talking about how our possessions, even if we love them, can create this mental clutter that impacts our well-being and even our relationships.
Interesting.
Swain compares it to like an artist's blank canvas.
Okay.
If it's cluttered with stuff, it's harder to be creative and think clearly.
Right.
So now imagine that canvas is your shared living space.
Okay.
Too much stuff can create tension and make it harder to connect with your roommate.
Oh, wow. So you're saying that clutter can actually, like, get in the way of building a positive relationship.
I think so.
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just the physical clutter, too. It's about understanding how your roommate's values and needs around stuff might differ from yours.
Okay.
Swain tells this story about losing a friend over a borrowed tent.
Oh, so.
And it highlights how borrowing and lending can actually reveal these deeper issues about how we value our possessions.
Interesting.
And how those values can clash in a shared living space.
Wow, that's a great point.
Yeah.
And it brings us to the values and needs part of PV.
Right.
Like, how do we even begin to understand those differences?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to something as personal as, like, our belongings.
That's a tough one. Swain really encourages us to have those conversations.
Okay.
Even if they feel awkward at first.
Yeah.
And he actually provides some sample dialogues in the book.
Oh, cool.
Like how to approach the topic of borrowing or lending.
Okay.
And it's not just about big items like tenant. It could be something as simple as like the last of the milk problem.
Yeah.
It's often those little things that can build up resentment over time.
Right. And you've been in plenty of shared living situations yourself.
Yeah, a few.
So have you found those conversations to be helpful in your own experience?
Honestly, yes. Sometimes just acknowledging the difference in values can diffuse a lot of tension.
Okay.
Like, hey, I know you're really generous with your things, but I tend to be more protective of mine. How can we find a system that works for both of us?
Right.
Just that open communication can go a long way.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about finding that balance between like respecting your own needs, but also being considerate of your roommate.
Exactly. It's not about one person being right or wrong.
Right.
It's about finding a way to coexist peacefully.
For sure. And that leads us to Swain's advice on kitchen cleanliness.
Oh, yeah, the kitchen.
He actually started with this, like, rule of just asking roommates to be neat.
Okay.
But it failed miserably because, as we've been talking about, everyone has different definitions of what neat means.
Right. Different standards, for sure.
Oh, I can relate to that. I once had a roommate who thought clean meant shoving everything into a cupboard.
Oh, no.
Regardless of whether it was actually washed or not.
Oh, my gosh.
It drove me crazy.
Yeah, I've been there.
So Swain switched to a much clearer rule.
Okay.
Clean up completely after yourself.
Okay.
No exceptions.
I like that.
Right. It takes the guesswork out of it.
Yeah.
And it sets a clear expectation.
Absolutely.
But then he throws in this unexpected twist.
Okay.
He encourages you to actually enjoy the kitchen experience.
What?
I know, right? I thought we were talking about avoiding conflict, not like gourmet cooking.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't expect that either.
Right. It seems kind of counterintuitive, but he's suggesting that taking the time to slow down, engage your senses, and find joy in preparing a meal can actually make the whole kitchen situation less stressful.
Interesting. So he's kind of sneaking in a mindfulness lesson in the middle of roommate advice.
Exactly. It's so clever.
I love that.
So it's not just about following rules. It's about shifting your mindset and finding ways to make those shared experiences more positive.
Absolutely. And, that ties back to the feeling component of P.E.P.
Right.
By focusing on the positive aspects of the experience, you're less likely to get bogged down in those negative emotions that can lead to conflict.
I love that. It's like he's saying, hey, instead of just tolerating your roommate, why not find ways to actually enjoy living with them?
Yeah, exactly. Make it a positive experience for everyone.
Yeah, and that could be as simple as like having a conversation about your favorite recipes or trying a new cooking technique together.
Right, just finding those little moments of connection.
Yeah.
That can make a big difference.
Totally. And speaking of connection, let's talk about noise.
Oh, yeah.
We've all been on both sides of that fence, right?
For sure, the noisemaker and a noise recipient.
Exactly. So Swain suggests noise-canceling devices.
Okay.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
But then he goes further.
Oh, really?
He suggests noise-generating devices, too.
Interesting.
Like white noise machines.
Huh. I see what he's doing there.
Yeah. What's that all about?
He's acknowledging that everyone has different noise sensitivities and preferences.
Right.
So instead of just saying be quiet, it's about providing options.
Okay.
And finding ways to create a soundscape that works for everyone.
That's a good point.
And that requires communication.
Yeah.
You have to talk to your roommate about what kind of noise bothers them and what times of day are most sensitive.
Right.
He even provides like an example dialogue for that exact conversation.
Oh, wow, that's helpful.
Yeah, it's really practical.
And you know what's really interesting about that?
What?
Swain's approach isn't about forcing anyone to change their behavior.
Right.
It's about providing tools and strategies to help people coexist peacefully.
Exactly.
Even with their differences.
I love that. It's about finding solutions that work for everyone.
Right, and it's about respect, too.
Absolutely.
It's not about saying, like, you're wrong for being sensitive to noise, or you're wrong for liking to listen to loud music.
Exactly.
It's about, like, finding that compromise that respects everyone's needs.
I think that's a key takeaway from this whole chapter.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we've covered boundaries, clutter, kitchen cleanliness, noise.
What else?
Where does Swain take us next?
Well, he dives into the potentially tricky subject of guests.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And this is where all those previous discussions about consideration and communication become even more important.
Oh, absolutely, because bringing guests into a shared living space just adds like another layer of complexity.
Right. It's a whole other dynamic.
Right. So how does Swain navigate that?
He emphasizes the importance of being upfront about overnight guests.
Okay.
Especially if they're romantic partners.
Yeah.
And it's not just about giving a heads up. It's about being sensitive to your roommate's feelings and offering them a way to opt out of any potentially awkward situations.
So like, hey, I know you have a date tonight. Would you prefer if I wasn't around?
Exactly. It's about being proactive and respectful of each other's space.
That makes sense. And you know what I love about Swain's approach?
What?
He doesn't shy away from the humor in these situations.
Oh, good.
He even includes this line, "Don't eat your guests."
Oh, my gosh. That's hilarious.
Right. It's funny, but also it's a good reminder that even in those, like, lighthearted moments, there are still boundaries to consider.
Absolutely.
Right. It's all about finding that balance between being respectful and having fun.
For sure.
And I think that's a key takeaway from Swain's approach to roommate relationships in general.
Totally. It's about finding that sweet spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Where everyone feels comfortable and respected. The next part I think really resonated with me. Swain stresses the importance of clear and proactive communication.
Okay.
He gives this example, like this simple message you can send your roommate, "I'll be away for."
Oh, that seems so basic. What's so profound about that?
Think about it, that one little message conveys so much. It lets your roommate know they can have the place to themselves. They might be responsible for pets or plants. They can blast their music without worrying about bothering you.
Okay.
It's about creating that sense of transparency and mutual respect.
Yeah, and it builds trust, right? Like knowing that you can rely on your roommate to communicate those seemingly small details.
Absolutely.
Can make a big difference in the overall dynamic.
For sure. And Swain really hammers that point home throughout the chapter. He talks about the importance of practicing saying the hard things.
Okay.
Rather than letting resentment build up over time.
So like having those awkward conversations about cleaning habits or noise levels.
Exactly. And he provides those practical examples like that "I'll be away for" message.
Right.
That can help you establish those clear communication patterns from the get-go.
It's like he's giving you a blueprint for building a respectful and fulfilling roommate relationship.
I love that.
And it's not just about avoiding conflict either. Swain also talks about the importance of finding ways to connect and have fun together.
Right. That's where this unexpected element of play comes in.
Play.
He talks about how finding ways to play together, whether it's video games, board games, even tabletop RPGs, can actually strengthen the bond between roommates.
Oh, that's so interesting. It seems like he's trying to remind us that having roommates isn't just about sharing space. It's about sharing life experiences.
Yeah, exactly.
And those moments of laughter and connection can really make a difference.
For sure. Have you ever actually used games as a way to connect with roommates?
I have. Back in my college days, my roommates and I would have these weekly board game nights.
Oh, fun.
It became this ritual that we all really looked forward to.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just about the game itself. It was about the time we spent together. Laughing, talking, getting to know each other better.
Right.
Creating memories.
Yeah.
And it definitely made our living situation more enjoyable.
I bet.
So Swain's definitely onto something with this whole play thing.
He is, and he even suggests analyzing your game preferences to better understand each other's values and needs.
Oh, really? How so?
Yeah, so for example, someone who loves strategy games might value planning and thinking ahead.
Okay.
While someone who prefers party games might prioritize spontaneity and social interaction.
Interesting.
So it's another example of how Swain finds these unexpected ways to weave P.E.P. into everyday interactions.
That's so cool. It's like he's saying, hey, even your game choices can reveal something about who you are and what you value.
Exactly.
That's awesome. He also briefly mentions this idea of building something together.
Yeah.
Like a chicken copa garden, whatever, as another avenue for connection.
I love that it's about finding those shared projects that can bring people together and create a sense of community.
For sure. And towards the end of the chapter, he provides these fascinating examples of conversations and exercises.
Oh, yeah.
What are those all about?
Those are designed to help you apply the principles of P.E.P. to real-life roommate situations.
Okay.
They offer concrete ways to communicate your feelings and needs effectively.
So it's not just theory.
No.
He's giving you actual tools to put this stuff into practice.
Exactly. They're almost like mini scripts for navigating those tricky conversations.
Gotcha. What kind of topics do they cover?
They cover a wide range of topics, from cleaning habits to noise levels to guest etiquette. He even includes scripts for having those difficult conversations about borrowing and lending.
Wow. So this is really practical advice that anyone can use?
It is.
And it's not about being a pushover or pretending that everything is always sunshine and roses,
Right.
It's about recognizing that everyone has their own needs and values.
Yes.
And finding ways to communicate and collaborate effectively.
Absolutely. And that's where Twain's approach really shines. It's about recognizing that a healthy roommate relationship involves both clear communication and shared positive experiences.
It's about creating a living environment where everyone feels respected, heard, and valued.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for our listener? What are the key takeaways from this deep dive into Swain's chapter on roommates?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that building positive roommate relationships is an active process.
Okay.
It requires effort, intention, and a willingness to understand where the other person is coming from.
So it's not just about finding someone who has the same taste in music or movies.
No, not at all.
It's about finding someone who's willing to communicate openly and honestly, even when it's uncomfortable.
Exactly. And someone who's willing to put in the work to build a relationship based on respect and mutual understanding.
And who maybe even wants to play a board game or two.
Right, because who knows, that board game night might just turn into a tradition that strengthens your bond and makes your living situation that much more enjoyable.
Yeah, that idea of the emotional bank account, It's a great way to think about it, you know?
It
It really
is.
drives home the point that building a strong roommate relationship is an ongoing
For
process.
sure.
It's those small, everyday actions that can really make a big difference in the long run.
Absolutely. And it's something you can start doing today, no matter what your current roommate situation looks like.
Right.
Even if you're already in a good place with your roommate, there's always room to strengthen that connection.
Yeah.
And build more trust.
So for our listener out there who might be struggling with a roommate situation right now,
Yeah.
what's one concrete step they can take today to start making those deposits into that emotional bank account?
I'd say start by choosing one specific piece of advice from Swain's book that really resonates with you.
Okay.
Maybe it's being more proactive about communication or being more mindful of noise levels. Whatever it is, just make a conscious effort to implement that one thing today.
It's like a little experiment.
Exactly. See how that one small change impacts the dynamic.
Right. And then as you start to see those positive results, you can gradually add more of Swain's principles into your interactions with your roommate.
Yeah, build on that success.
Yeah, it's about building momentum and creating a positive feedback loop.
I love that it's not about trying to change everything overnight. It's about making the small, consistent efforts that can lead to big changes over time.
And, as you go through this process, remember that it's okay to make mistakes.
Oh, for sure.
No one is perfect, and there will be times when you slip up.
Absolutely.
The important thing is to keep those lines of communication open.
Yes.
And be willing to work through those challenges together.
Communication is key in any relationship.
That's such a great reminder. It's not about avoiding conflict altogether.
Right.
It's about having the tools and the mindset to navigate those conflicts in a healthy and productive way.
Exactly. And as you do that, you might just find that your roommate relationship becomes a source of support, connection, and even joy.
Yeah, who wouldn't want that? Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive
It has.
into the world of roommate dynamics.
For sure.
We've uncovered some practical tips, thought-provoking concepts, and even a few laughs along the way.
It's been a pleasure exploring this chapter with you.
Likewise.
I think Swain's approach to roommate relationships offers valuable insights that we can all apply to our lives.
Yeah.
Whether we're living with someone now or will be in the future.
Absolutely. So to our listener, as you embark on your own roommate adventures, remember that it's not just about finding the perfect person.
Right.
It's about building the perfect relationship.
I love that.
And with a little bit of effort, intention, and maybe even a board game or two,
Yeah.
you might just find that living with someone else can be one of the most rewarding experiences of your life.
Absolutely, I agree.